I left home thinking I had a wife waiting for me. Instead, I returned to find my marriage dissolved with a cold email and an empty bank account. But what I thought was the end of everything became the beginning of a life I never knew I deserved. This is the story of how I lost everything and found myself. Hi, my name is Daniel Reed. I'm 32 years old and a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. This isn't just a story of humiliation, it's a story of awakening. If you've ever felt invisible or betrayed by the people you trusted most, this story is for you. Make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to hear your story too. Let's begin. I was somewhere deep in the desert, half a world away from home, when it happened. Our missions had become more dangerous recently. Every day, I woke up not knowing if I would see the next sunset. The little things kept me going. An old photo tucked inside my vest, the memory of my wife's laughter, and dreams of the life we build when I came back. Home, family, trust, or so I thought. One evening, after a long patrol under the burning sun, I found a rare moment to check my emails. The internet connection was spotty, almost mocking me with its slow loading times. But when my inbox finally appeared, one subject line made my blood run cold. Final notice, divorce confirmation. At first, I thought it was spam, some scam, or a cruel mistake. But when I clicked on it, I saw her name. Melissa, my wife of 5 years. The woman I thought was waiting for me back home. Her message was cold, almost surgical. Daniel, I've thought long and hard about this. Life is too short. I've moved on. By the time you read this, the paperwork will be finalized. I've also withdrawn our joint savings. I hope you understand. Please don't try to contact me. Understand? Understand what, exactly? That she gutted the life we built with one email? That she left me stranded with nothing, thousands of miles from home, fighting not just enemies on the battlefield, but betrayal in my own heart? I sat there, frozen, the desert wind blowing sand into my face, stinging my skin. But the real sting was inside. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, anything. But I couldn't. Not here. Not now. I was a soldier. I buried the explosion inside me, buried it deep like a live grenade ticking in my chest. The next morning, while my unit packed up for another dangerous mission, I moved on autopilot. But inside, something had shifted. Something unbreakable. Melissa might have taken the money. She might have taken the dreams. But she hadn't taken me. And she sure as hell hadn't taken what was coming next. Days blurred into nights after that email. While my body marched, fought, and survived, my mind was elsewhere, trapped in that moment of betrayal. But somewhere in the cracks of that pain, something powerful began to grow. I realized I had two choices. I could let her destroy me, or I could use this pain to forge a version of myself that no one could ever break again. The first thing I did was find out the damage. During a short break between missions, I managed to connect to the military's secure communication center. The staff sergeant at the front desk raised an eyebrow when he saw the urgency in my request, but said nothing. Soldiers here all carried invisible wounds. Mine just happened to come in the form of a betrayal back home. Logging into my personal banking account was another blow. Balance, $7.83. $7.83 out of the nearly $50,000 we'd saved together over the years. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the trust, the promises, the silent sacrifices. And now, staring at that balance, I understood something deeper. Melissa hadn't just emptied our account. She had emptied her place in my life. And maybe, just maybe, she had freed me in a way neither of us saw coming. Later that night, after another blistering patrol, I sat alone under a sky full of cold, distant stars. The air was dry and sharp, carrying the weight of 1,000 broken promises whispered by soldiers before me. That's when I made a vow. I would come back. I would rebuild. Not just my finances, not just my career, but me. Stronger, smarter, undefeatable. She may have thought she had won, but the real battle, the one that mattered, was just beginning. And this time, I wasn't fighting for her. I was fighting for me. Deployment life doesn't leave much room for grief. You can't afford to be distracted when danger lurks around every corner. So I wore my uniform like armor, hiding every crack underneath. But at night, when the world outside the base quieted, the memories crept in. I started writing letters. Not emails, not texts, real letters. At first, they were meant for Melissa. The words spilled out fast and raw. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I wanted her to know exactly how she had broken me. Exactly what it felt like to be left behind like some disposable burden. But then something unexpected happened. The more I wrote, the less it became about her. And the more it became about me. The letters shifted. They turned into pages filled with dreams, plans, and promises. Promises not to her, but to myself. You will not be defined by the people who leave you. I wrote one night, under the flicker of a single worn-out bulb. You will rise. I never sent those letters. They stayed tucked away inside my rucksack, silent witnesses to the war raging inside me. Meanwhile, my fellow soldiers started noticing the change. "Hey, Reed," one of the guys said one evening around the fire pit. "You're different lately. Focused. Like nothing shakes you anymore." I smiled quietly, poking the fire with a stick. If only they knew. The truth was, I had already survived the worst ambush of my life. And it hadn't happened on a battlefield. It had happened in my own home, with a woman I once trusted with my life. That was the night I decided. When I returned home, I wouldn't go back to my old life. I would build a new one, on my own terms. And when Melissa saw what she had thrown away, it would be too late. Far, far too late. Months passed. The desert sun that once burned my skin now felt like nothing compared to the fire I carried inside. When my deployment ended, I boarded the military transport plane with a single duffel bag and a heart that no longer bled. I wasn't the same man who had left. And soon, Melissa would find that out too. The plane touched down late at night. The city lights blurred beneath a thin sheet of rain, like the world itself was wiping clean and starting over. I didn't tell anyone I was coming home. No family, no friends, certainly not Melissa. As I stepped off the plane and grabbed my bag, I took a deep breath. Freedom had a different smell now. Colder, sharper, more honest. First stop, a cheap rental car. Second stop, the old house we once shared. Or rather, the house she now lived in alone. I parked across the street. From my seat, I could see the faint glow of the living room lights through the windows. It didn't even feel like my home anymore. It was just a building, for walls that no longer held any love. And then, I saw it. Through the blinds, a shadow moved. A man, laughing. Close. Too close. It didn't surprise me. In a way, it confirmed what I had suspected all along. The money she stole, the quick divorce. It had never just been about her needing space or finding herself. She had already replaced me before I even left the ground overseas. The rage I expected to feel never came. Instead, there was only clarity. Pure, cutting clarity. This wasn't my battle anymore. She had made her choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. I turned the key in the ignition and drove away, without ever knocking on that door. She didn't deserve the closure, and I didn't need her permission to start over. Driving away from that house felt like shedding a skin I had outgrown. It was painful, but necessary. It wasn't just Melissa I was leaving behind that night. It was the broken version of myself who needed her. I checked into a modest motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. A new day, a new life. I pulled out my battered laptop, still covered in desert dust, and opened a blank document. It was time to rebuild, and I knew exactly where to start. Before my deployment, I had always dreamed of opening my own business, something small, something mine. But fear, comfort, and Melissa's doubts had kept me tethered to the safe path. Now, nothing was holding me back. I spent hours researching veteran small business loans. I outlined plans. I made calls. By the end of the week, I had secured a meeting with a program that specialized in helping returning soldiers start fresh. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about proving to myself that I mattered, that my life wasn't over because someone else decided to leave. Meanwhile, whispers started to spread through the small town. People who once gossiped about poor Daniel overseas now heard about Daniel the business owner. They heard about a man who didn't crawl back, a man who rose higher than ever. And Melissa? From what little I picked up, things weren't going the way she planned. The man I saw that night, he didn't stick around. Money runs out. Lies catch up. And when the walls of her world started to crumble, I wasn't there to hold them up. I was too busy building my own. Success didn't happen overnight. It came quietly, like slow-growing roots under the surface. Each small win stacked up. Permits filed, deals made, doors opened. In less than a year, my small auto detailing and restoration shop became one of the busiest in the county. Word got around fast. Veteran-owned. Honest service. Attention to detail like no other. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And that's what happened. One late afternoon, as I was closing the shop, a familiar car pulled into the lot. My chest tightened, not from longing, not from anger, but from an overwhelming sense of closure. Melissa stepped out. Tom had not been kind to her. Her once carefully curated smile was gone, replaced by something desperate, almost hollow. She stood there for a moment, awkward and uncertain, before finally crossing the lot toward me. "Daniel," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. "I heard about the shop. It's impressive." I said nothing. I simply wiped the grease from my hands and waited. She fidgeted with her keys, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure if she should even be here. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "I miss what we had. Maybe we could talk sometime." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. But I didn't. Instead, I simply met her eyes, calm, steady, unshakable, and gave her the only answer she deserved. "I'm not the man you left behind," I said, "and you're not the woman I would ever choose again." The silence between us stretched painfully thin. Melissa opened her mouth to say something else, but no words came. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car. No tears, no begging, just a heavy, final goodbye written in the way her shoulders sagged as she drove away. I watched her tail lights fade into the distance, feeling no sadness, only gratitude, not for what we had, but for what I survived, and for who I had become because of it. After Melissa drove away, I stayed in the lot a little longer. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and fire, like the universe itself was closing a chapter with me. I realized then, forgiveness wasn't about letting someone back in. It was about releasing their power over you. And in that moment, I was free. Free from the bitterness. Free from the betrayal. Free from the invisible chains I hadn't even known I wore. The next few months were the best of my life. I expanded the shop, hired a few fellow veterans who needed a second chance just like I once did. We built something real together, something that no one could steal with a single email. I moved into a small but beautiful house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't big, but it was mine. And sometimes on quiet nights, I would sit out on the back porch, sipping black coffee, staring up at the stars. The same stars I used to stare at overseas, wishing for a future that seemed so far away. I had made it, not because someone saved me, not because life handed it to me, but because I fought for it, every damn step of the way. And if you're listening to this, wondering if you can survive the kind of betrayal that feels like it'll break you, hear me now. You can. You will. And when you do, you'll realize the people who abandoned you weren't taking anything from you. They were making room. Room for the life you were meant to live. Room for the person you were always meant to become. Because sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is the very thing that sets you free.